All right, I'm Jeffrey Rickman. I'm the pastor at the Methodist Church here in Nowata, and I also serve on the Splash Pad Committee that's trying to build a splash pad here in town. And I'm sitting down with Melva Hill and Garry Gibson. And Melva and Garry both grew up in Nowata. We're going to hear their stories, but we got a lot of history here, and I'm really honored to be sitting down with them. Melva's got a lot of good things about her that I don't know yet, but I'm going to know. And then I actually know Garry from some stuff we've done before. He is currently our treasurer for the city of Nowata. He serves on the city commission. And then they're both proud members of where we're sitting down right now, the First Baptist Church of Nowata, founded in 1869. That's right. I did not know this. They were out in the country and they moved in. Probably the oldest church building in this town. So maybe we need to do another video on that. But the Splash Pad wanted to cooperate with the Lincoln, what is the actual name of the organization? The Lincoln School Foundation, what is it?
The Lincoln School Alumni Reunion.
Okay.
Scholarship Committee.
Okay, yeah. So this is the committee the group that maintains the heritage and the history of the Lincoln School, which was the school from the days of segregation whenever there was a school for black people in Nowata. Yes. They are located right next to John H. Morgan Park,
Yes.
Where we are wanting to build the splash pad, but we're wanting to do it in a way that honors the history and the heritage of the area, of the neighborhood, and so we've wanted to build a relationship with them. And at the Methodist Church, we have a good setup to record stuff like this. We've recorded some history, and we thought we might record some more history for the benefit of Nowata, so that young people in particular might know the shoulders that we're standing on and what we've inherited. And we've been planning this for a couple weeks. I've been very excited to sit down with you guys, and thank you for sitting down with me.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
If we could do just a brief bio on each of you. I'd like to start with you, Melva, and then go to you, Garry, just talking about your history in this town, and then with the Lincoln School in particular, and then we'll go from there. So, Melva, did you grow up here?
When I lived in the country, I was born in Alloway, out there.
Old Alloway?
Yes, I guess you would call. Well, in the country. I wouldn't say Alloway. In the country.
Okay.
We lived in the country.
Okay.
And I went to school out there, the Madden School, for 3 years before we moved to town. And then I came here and went to Lincoln for 3 years over there. It was good. Like I said, I remember I was telling her about it. Like I said, we had the grade school on one side, and you had a hallway and had an auditorium even in there. And on the other side was high school. And then we had a big gym too. We really did. And we had, let's see how many, 3 teachers for the grade school, if I can remember right.
What years was this?
We came over here in 1956.
Okay. So you were in Lincoln from 56 to 60 about?
Yes.
Okay.
57, because that's when they integrated, was 57. When we started going up there was 57. So I went to school here 3 years. Maybe it was 56. No, that's not right.
Be 54.
54.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 54. He's getting me straight.
Mm-hmm.
So you went to Lincoln the last 3 years before integration?
Yes.
Okay.
4th, 5th, and 6th grade, I went there.
Okay.
Sure did.
But the Lincoln School was all grades. It was a 12-grade school.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
But when we started out there at Madden, it was just for the 8th grade, and then that's when the people started coming to Nowata.
And was Madden, well, it was a segregated school too?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, because it was before integration. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it sure was. And from there, like I said, I went from 7th grade to 9th grade in middle school and high school. We all went together. When we first started going up there, it was just they hadn't built the high school. So the grade school, the junior high went in the morning, and the high school went in the afternoon until they got the new school built. So,
for the city of Nowata? Mm-hmm. They didn't have a high school, they only had the middle school?
They only had the middle school then.
Really?
Yes.
And so mornings was
for the junior high, and after, I forget, either way, anyway, we just went to school half a day.
Half a day.
Yes.
Y'all had it easy.
We sure did. We sure did.
And then you graduated out of Nowata High School.
Yes, 1964.
And you've been here ever since.
Been here all my life. I haven't left. Been here all my life.
Wonderful.
Yes.
I'm so glad to be sitting down with you.
Well, thank you.
Garry, what about you?
I'm the first generation from my mother and father who actually went to school from grade 1 into the 12th grade at Lincoln. I knew a lot.
Wait, did you just say both your parents went
Both
to
my
Lincoln?
parents, my father
start
and my
to
mother.
finish. Okay.
Start to finish. And at that time, I knew the history of it, but we also lived out in the farming community that was called the Lightning Creek area, which was just a little bit to the north and east of Old Alloy before it came as New Alloy, where I started my education in Alloy. And then in '72, we moved here, and that building for the Lincoln School was still there. Now, it was uninhabited, but it was still there. And then in '74 was when they were starting to clear up that area, and a lot of the history of the schools that for the Lincoln School I only received through my parents and my oldest brother. My oldest brother went to Lincoln. I think his first and second grade. And then that's when we went and moved out of Nowata and moved to what they call the East Star Route District, which is the Alloy part of it, east of Nowata.
Okay. So your older brother went to Lincoln, and you went to Lincoln?
No.
You did not go to Lincoln.
I did not go to Lincoln.
You're serving on the foundation
There you go.
for preserving the history.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm considered what you call the first generation of the one that works for the history of it all.
Okay.
That come in where your parents or a sibling or something
I hear
came
you.
in, but I never had the opportunity to attend.
So did you go to Nowata Public Schools after integration?
Yes, I did, because once we moved here in '72, the integration was already done.
Right.
And I did what I call my last years from 7th grade to the 12th grade here in Nowata, and this is where I graduated in '78.
Great. Okay. Okay. So you guys both serve on the Lincoln Endowment Fund Committee. I'm sorry I'm butchering the name, but I know that y'all have a specific function other than the broad function of maintaining a story and a heritage. What are the things that y'all do as a group that the community should know about?
Well, we generally come in as one of the things that all the actual Lincoln graduates or the Lincoln children that actually participated in the school before it was shut down, we established a scholarship fund, especially for the, I guess what you call the heirs of the parents, the grandparents that went there, for the kids who were looking for a higher level of education. A lot of the parts that they had for the scholarships are kind of overlooked for the children of color. A lot of the ones that came in for also for gender. And so what this does is it gives a little extra money for the kids who wants to come in and get that education, and it allows them to go up another tier where they can get into the regular mainstream of the scholarship fundings that you can go to these bigger colleges, smaller colleges, even HBCUs, which was 2 of my 4 had went to. And what we do is we do fundraisers that we do. I think we have one big one that we do every October.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's so well known for Nowata, and Nowata is amazing because they just do an outpouring to support this program. So it's not to the point where it was separated, but now with our generation that comes in there, we offer so much for the Lincoln heirs, but because of the way the kids and the marriage flows comes in here, we have everybody. So a lot of folks that comes in there now, it's just like for me, they say, everybody look at me and say, you're African American. And I said, yeah, I'm also Native American and I'm Irish American. And everybody looked at me like, okay, that's one scrambled up egg right there, okay? So we just keep coming with it. But this brings in everybody. This also puts fairness on the table for those that want to achieve that higher level of education.
Yeah.
So people out of Melva's generation, which are outstanding, great country time cookers, and it just spoiled the whole Nowata and everything else. So he said, get them gals up there and let's get a meal in here.
Yes.
So is that what the fundraiser is? It's a meal?
Yes.
Yeah, tell us, Melva, about the fundraiser. It's
We
coming
usually
up in October?
We don't have them anymore. Not since COVID, we haven't had them. We used to have, I know. You haven't come. You got to come sometime. No,
Well,
we
do it
haven't.
this October. I'll be there.
I think we
But
are.
yeah, we have turkey and dressing and chicken. We have, you can choose. Anyway, mashed potatoes, gravy, everything. But it is a fundraiser for the scholarship, and we used to give $1,500 a year when we were doing it to each student that's graduated.
Yeah, through
Yes.
qualification. part of
Yes,
it.
through qualifications.
Well, we'll hope that the muscle's there this year, and y'all can keep blessing the community, and the
Amen.
community can keep blessing y'all.
Yes.
Well, I tell you, we got an awesome community. We love them.
We
Yeah.
do. We
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot more of your personal history will come in as we flesh out some of this history. I tried to just put together a bare bones timeline of larger federal, social, cultural changes in the United States, and then we'll talk about where Lincoln School fit into all that. So even though this church was built in 1869, I did not know that, this township of Nowata really came together in 1889, 20 years after that. And so it was until 1896, that was 7 years later, that Plessy versus Ferguson happened, and that's what codified segregation across the United States. And it wasn't that there was no segregation before that.
Right.
It's that this was Indian territory and it was Wild West, and the history reading that I've done, and it's not extensive, was that there was big cultural separation, big social separation, but not just between whites and blacks, but also between Native Americans.
That's right.
Before Nowata was even here. But as Nowata developed, it had that separation, and then it was federally codified in Plessy versus Ferguson. And then, let's see, the Lincoln School was founded in 1906, and that was the year before Oklahoma became a state.
That's correct.
And then in 1954, so Lincoln continued. 1954, Brown versus Board of Education effectively ended integration, or ended segregation, began integration, but it took a few years to do that across the United States. So the Lincoln School maintained for 3 more years until in 1957, Nowata integrated.
Yes.
And then the school closed for good in 1968.
That's correct.
So what was going on between 57 and 68 at the Lincoln School? What was the building used for?
Nothing.
Nothing. It just sat there.
Well, I take that back. Didn't Merle Port? It was a guy who used to have auctions in the gym before they demolished it.
Auctions in the gym. Okay.
He did. He had auctions.
And then when did they demolish the building?
I don't really.
I believe when we moved in '72, because we helped tear that building down because Mr. Porter, Merle Porter, had all the kids that wanted to come in, and I think at that time he was offering half a penny a brick because they wanted to preserve the bricks because it came out of the Nowata brick company that they had here. And they were going to save those bricks to do the repairs for the brick roads that were here in Nowata. But from what I was told with my mother, that when they desegregated everything and for Lincoln students was to migrate into Nowata, it was a slow transition, and that school stayed active, I was told, all the way until 1962. Because my oldest brother came in there, it would have put him at, he's born in 53, 7. So in 60, in 61, he went to Lincoln, and it was still active school up to 62. Now, the thing that happened was that the enrollment had dwindled so little, and then with the Nowata school coming up and bringing all the students in, all the money that was being directed for the schools was going to Nowata, and what it did, it dissolved Lincoln, and they eventually had to close it.
So so after integration began, Nowata Public Schools was welcoming in the black students, or accepting them into enrollment, but there were still students at the Lincoln School?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
little. I was thinking that little building that they have over there with Head Start.
Yeah.
Right after this first to the 6th grade did go there
Okay.
for a few years after
Now,
they integrated.
was it only black students
Yes.
there, even
Yes.
after integration?
Yes.
Interesting.
Was I? Yes.
That's
Yes,
right.
it was. It was
Okay.
just black students there.
Huh.
Sure was.
That's weird.
Yeah. I'd say,
That was segregation after segregation ended, huh?
yeah. Yeah. There was a part of distrust, and it was a part of the focus.
Yeah.
You know, coming into the school part of it all, this was the avenue and how everybody traveled. So when something new came in, that change, it created a lot of conflicts.
Sure.
And one of the things was being the part that was the biggest concern was being fairly treated. And from everything that I knew of, the Nowata school was very receptive and offered everything that was there for the kids.
Yeah.
That was coming in, that was migrating in from the Lincoln School, from what I was told. Now, I wasn't involved with that. I was too young.
Yeah. Yeah, depending on who you talk to. And I haven't talked, I'm not running around talking race with everybody in Nowata, but I have talked to a couple people that were alive during integration. And a couple of them said, it went great. And a couple of them said,
really did.
it didn't go so great. And of course, there was a public incident that there was a prom king and queen. The king was black, the queen was white, and it was traditional that they would kiss. What year was
Right.
this?
Ooh, I don't remember.
I want to say it was 68, but I couldn't
think it
tell.
was earlier than 68. It was right before we moved here, and I want to say it was 70 or 71.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, it got a bunch of people up in arms because
Yes.
that was just really pushing against the cultural norms of the era. So there were some setbacks, but most of the people I've talked about are white, and they remember integration, and they go, really? I remember a couple fights in the bathroom, and for the most part, things went pretty well.
It really did. We didn't have any fights, like you see in these other schools or town cities where they fight and go all the time, call each other names. We didn't have that. We really didn't.
That's good. That's good for people to know, I think.
What it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a lot of the Hollywood stereotype and kind of covers the bad things, but doesn't show the good.
Right.
And like I said, even today, you still got fights that goes in the bathrooms.
Right.
And it's not no racial tension.
No.
Well, let's talk about, because a lot of people, I hope a lot of people, well, I know the homeschool co-op is going to sit down and watch this. A lot of young people, there is nothing like segregation nowadays. So let's just talk, there's no way to cover all the details involved of living in America or Nowata during the days of segregation. But the things I know about it here in Nowata, I know that in the days of segregation, the cemetery, there was a wall between the black and the white section, and it was a big deal when they tore that wall down.
Yep.
I know that we had a train line that ran north into Kansas, and I think it was segregated in Oklahoma, but once you hit the Kansas border, the segregation ended, and they could get up and move around, and they did. And then, of course, we're familiar with water fountains being blacks or whites only.
yeah.
I know that they had a swimming pool back then, but black folks were not
Couldn't go.
allowed at the swimming pool. What were some other differences in the days of segregation?
When you go to the courthouse, they had a bathroom. It had for colored people only. I mean, that's the only one you could go in there and use. And another thing, the Rex Theater, we couldn't go in the front door, front the mission. We had to go up the side there to go upstairs to go in there. We couldn't use the bathrooms. We had to go outside to use the bathroom. We couldn't use the bathrooms in there in the theater. And then there was another theater across the street. Blacks couldn't go in it at all. You could not go in there.
It was a whites only theater.
It was called the Luxter.
Okay.
And you couldn't go in there. And then, let's see, I can say in the drugstores, you could go in and get something to drink, but you couldn't sit there. That was in the 50s when I was a child. But let's see what else that I can think of. But you just knew that you couldn't go, so you didn't do it. Really didn't.
Yeah.
But we never had any fights, or nobody ever said anything called you out of a name. But you just knew you couldn't go You couldn't go.
Anything to add to that?
Well, now that was a few years before my time
Right.
that came in for the move, but I had heard a lot of stories back and forth, especially with the movie, the Rex movie theater, where you would come in through the front door and pay for your ticket, then you had to walk out and take the staircase up to the balcony, and then because you wasn't allowed to go in.
Right.
And then it was weird because by the time we moved here in '72, all that was set aside, and when the kids would come in, everybody first. It's amazing how history works, because everybody wanted to sit in the balcony, and they wouldn't let you sit there until the bottom floor was filled up, and then they would open up the balcony. And then before then, it was selected who could sit there in the balcony, and everybody sat below it. And I had heard the other stories of the other theater, but that was being it was discontinued in '72 when we arrived.
Okay.
And then the racial barriers that they had with the tracks and everything that came in from the time we arrived, but it appeared from at least '64 to '72 there was a transition that was being made in Nowata, and it was favoring the part for everybody to collaborate together as one. And it was, in my thought looking back, it was the children who erased that division of race. Not so much the parents, but the parents eventually followed, and they caught up with the children.
Neat. That's a fun history. So something I was curious about, and I didn't write it down in our questions, of course, but with Plessy versus Ferguson, one of the phrases that got used in that court case was separate but equal. The notion was that whites and blacks could be separate, but all their separate institutions should receive the same funding, have the same resources. With the Lincoln School compared to the Nowata Public School, was that the case? Did the Lincoln School have similar quality resources to the white school, or was there a quality difference? Do you know?
I don't really.
Because of course you didn't go to the
That's what I'm saying.
white school at that time.
Hey.
Did you get the sense that you were getting short shrift when you were there, or was it a pretty good facility with good teachers?
It's pretty good to me. I can't complain.
Well, I mean, so you were flipping through. Go ahead and hold up the book for that camera,
Okay.
just to show the cover.
Okay.
This is a memorial book that was put together in 1968, I guess.
No, it was 1990.
1990. Okay,
Yeah,
excuse
we
me.
actually started the Lincoln's reunion. That's when we
And
started.
y'all were
it.
flipping through that before we started filming, and it seemed to me, at least, that it had pictures of a lot of the teachers there, and it sounded like y'all had some high-quality teachers there that were strict, held,
yeah.
held
Oh, yes,
students
we
to a high
did.
standard.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and you know, for the funny part that you had not to send it back, listening to what my parents had said, the funding was really somewhat lacked, and it was an offset that was there for the schools, especially for the black schools. But these educators that come in there, they were top notch. I mean, a lot of part that came in out of Lincoln, I think there was lawyers, there were doctors, there was people that was in key figures, but they couldn't operate here with it because it didn't give the fair opportunity. But for the money sources that was in, it was pretty close. It was pretty close, and the people that came in that they had brought in from the educators, I'm not sure where they found this group, but their abilities that I was told was at the professor level that they was teaching these kids and everything that was coming through here. So they had the tools to work with. I don't know if all the fundings was always correct and how it was fair to do your traveling. Especially my dad was heavy into the sports of football and basketball, and they traveled the areas and everything. And there were places where you go in the city where you just couldn't have a place to put these kids at. So the community would open up the houses, what they called those houses back then, and they would let them spend the night so they can come back the next day to travel it. And that's how they had to do their travels.
Hostels?
They were homes that would accept the kids and where they could spend the night.
It wouldn't be boarding homes. It would be.
No.
Well, this is a part of history I don't know about.
Well, you know, they had. Well, there's a lot of them. You can see it on TV and some of the programs they have with it. But they had a name for these homes.
Okay.
And it was almost like a hospitality home type deal.
Okay.
And that they were running. They would allow the kids to come in there and stay if they were too far out for the driving, and everything that came in with it. And Nowatas was the same way. You know, even with the sportings and everything, they had separated. But Bartersville, Pawhuska, Veneta, all the surrounding areas, they even had places in Kansas that they would come in and do the sports, listen to what my parents had to say.
So the impression I got about the Lincoln School is not that it was just some poor quality place, but actually it was a high quality place with high quality students and
Yes.
high quality teachers,
Yes.
and facilities were decent.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna take some scans of some photos that we haven't got yet, but hopefully we'll get some good stuff and put it on there. And it was placed where the park is now, right?
That was part of the whole school compound. Where the school actually said is where the car lot is, the now car lot. That's where that structure set.
Oh, it was right up against the highway there.
Yes,
Yes.
it was right there. Now the part that we're dealing with, John Morgan Park, that's now, which was called Lincoln Park, at the part where the school had given to, that whole square part, even where the park that we were at, even where you got the baseball field, is where they played their baseball and had all their games and everything for the school. And right behind where the school is, where the car lot part is, was where the football field at, and they had their stadium and the bleachers and everything. It's where they played their football at. And they had brought it in from all the other schools that were in the neighboring area, like what you call your conferences that we have today, and they would come there and they would play their sporting events. So
I'm
that
trying to fit it all in my head, because it's a big area. I wouldn't think it's big enough to have a football field and a baseball diamond back there, plus the seating but it all fit, huh?
it did.
Wow. Was it a good sports program?
They
Per
did.
se, my dad.
Yeah, I know John Wesley King too.
There you
How
go,
he used to
$6?
play. Yeah, $6. He used to play football, and he said he was good. He was always talking about that when he was.
They said he would have been at the professional level at that time that came in, but the way that they handled the education, especially for those that have little mental challenges, right there, it wasn't there. You know, is before the time, but
Right.
he was remarkable.
He was.
So we skirted up against it, but it's no longer called Lincoln Park. It's called John H. Morgan Park. And why did the name get changed?
Well, John Morgan was a commissioner for a long time, city commissioner.
He was a city commissioner.
Yes, he was. He was
And
the
he was
first
a-
black.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, first black John Morgan, and that's the reason they gave him the name for him.
So when did John Morgan serve the city?
Ooh wee. Now, I don't. Let me think here. I think how long I've been married. Ooh wee. It's been a long time ago.
Would it have been
60s,
in the days of
70s.
integration?
Yeah, it was. Yes,
60s, maybe early 70s?
I'll say 70s.
Okay,
Yeah.
70s.
70s.
Okay. So he was elected as one of the city commissioners and
Yes,
served well enough to get a park named after him.
he did. He
Good.
did.
Wonderful.
Sure did.
All right, so let's we've talked about the academic programs, we've talked about the teachers, we talked about the sports. What else is important to remember about the Lincoln School? It was around for what, 60, 70 years?
That'd be about right.
Yeah, 70 years. So 70 years of history to preserve. What else is important to talk about there?
Well, for me, and like I said, being the first generation descendant under this program, I was amazed and so impressed how Lincoln prepared their students for that next level of education. And we talked briefly about how OSU at that time was known as Oklahoma A&M, and most of the kids that came through there to get that next level went to Langston University. And I was surprised to know that there were so many Langston University graduates, because Cheryl Calliman was one, I think was one of the first educators that came back here, wasn't it?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Langston is a historically black college.
It is. It's HBCU.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. My two youngest ones just graduated from it.
Great.
Yeah. So I got a little history on that one as well.
Yeah, yeah. So they're prepared. We were also talking, we can connect it to the Lincoln thing or not, but you and I were kind of going on a diatribe before we started recording on. We got people that are trained up in Nowata and very capable, and they think that they need to go away and live in a city and have a higher income. But why don't you go ahead and make your case as to why that's maybe not the best
You know,
path?
and like I said, I will say that I'm one of the guilty parties too as well, and I really thank the Lord for giving me the avenue to come back. But after I had graduated Nowata in '78, I joined the military and served 7 years in the Navy, and I wanted to start my career. And what I did is I just totally ignored Oklahoma, and I started in Texas. And then when I heard people talking about, the reasons why we're losing the smaller towns and the state's losing a lot of things, that you have a lot of gifted people who can give back exactly what your community gave to you to get where you're at. And we ignored the part because we looked at the dollar sign. Okay, I'm gonna get paid more, but when you go to these places, come here, you also got to pay more to live there. And when you do the math and to balance it out, you actually do better here than what you do into the other places that comes in.
Right.
So when I heard the report of another one that was coming back as a counselor, also as an educator, and she was a mega cum laude in college. So she was way up there for her GPA group and would do extremely well for not just for the black community, but for the whole community in general, just to come in and to share that talent and that gift that's given. So I would always say, go test your waters and everything, but don't forget about home.
Yeah.
Because home is the place that's always going to be called home.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if you continue to do a brain drain, take your best people and not hold on to them, these small towns are going to continue to sink because it's not. If you just kept everybody where they were, you'd have equal talent spread out. But as it is, all the talent goes away, and then small towns like this are trying to put together the pieces, and there's a lot of benefits to living in a small town.
It is.
After having lived out here for a bit, anytime I go to Tulsa, I want to take some kind of relaxant so that I just waiting in traffic all the time, wherever you want to go. We got one traffic light in Nowata. I love anyway, that's just one of many different features about living in a small town. I've lived in Tulsa, I've lived in Boston, I've lived in Little Rock. You can't pay me enough to go to a city again. And Nowata really is a wonderful place to be. There's a lot of other good history here. You and I connected last week, Gary, on the old AME church here in town.
Yes.
And the Lincoln Foundation is not the only group that's dedicated to preserving the heritage and history of different institutions in this town. We've got the Historical Society and the museum. But Gary, you and I had a serious conversation about maybe trying to put something together where we have some permanent funds to protect and take care of a lot of these old institutions. The AME church has fallen apart.
Yes.
Maybe it'd be nice to put that back together and maintain those grounds.
Yep.
So what's there to say about, so let's start with generally the town of Nowata. What do we want to preserve here? But then let's bring it to the Lincoln School. What's the heritage and history of the Lincoln School that we want to preserve here in this town? So I know that's kind of a big way of framing it, but let's just start with the city. What stuff is worth preserving about this town? What parts of our history and culture?
Well, I think for me, and like I said, I'm the first generation after the group and Lincoln had closed its doors, is to preserve the history of what it did and served for Nowata. Because it wasn't just for the black community. Everybody still used the services that was there. Everybody still used what was the education that everybody pulled from that part to still establish this town. And I think if we can come out and just give the history of it, of that part to preserve it, I think this would help this new generation where they can all come together and have it as a starting block and say, listen, this is where it was, and this is where we are now. And if we ever want to make it better, then we'll have to learn how to collaborate more together as one, and not as a gender, not as a color, but as a human race, and just get to the things that we would like to achieve in life. Everybody would love to see Nowata come in and be a little bit more inspiring, especially for the part of opportunity for work and jobs and everything that's there. We like to bring things up to be where it's a little bit more modern, and we're getting there as well. But we also like to recognize the ones that actually was the starting block, that was the foundation for us to build this right here as well. Because Lincoln played a major role for Nowata while we were being segregated, but everybody still had to work together.
Yeah. Melva, all that sound right?
Sounds good to me.
So let me, as I'm processing that, the conversation that's happening nationally as you turn on the TV is black people, the black population has always been underserved. It's always been taken advantage of. It's always been beaten up. They never had any opportunity to do well. And even today, there are huge systems in place that hold them down. And so the way to properly feel about black people is they are victims. They've been held down. We need to lift them up. That stands in, I hear something different from you. As we've sat together, I hear, yes, there was injustice in the past, but we were able to have great institutions, high quality people, generated a good crop of students with capable minds, and were able to have some social mobility. And we as a town were not this stereotype that Hollywood creates, where there was just racial animus and everybody hating each other, but really things weren't perfect, but they were okay, and they've gotten better since then, and there's no reason to see anybody as automatically as victims or oppressors, but that the heritage of the past leading to the future can be a story of cooperation, and I know it's a bad word nowadays, but colorblindness, where people just thrive based on their abilities and their connection to one another. And maybe even though the story of Lincoln begins with segregation, it points toward a future where black people in Nowata are not defined by the injustices of the past, but have a heritage of high quality equality with white folks. Does all that fit, or does that seem?
No, it fits that.
Yeah, it is, because Jeffrey, you and I, we always talk. Especially, I know a little bit about the history coming out of Tulsa, and that's working with it, and where you was educated as well. you know, I wish that the world would take the time to understand there were a lot of people that were persecuted, and I'm not talking about the black families. I'm talking about the white families that stood up for the black community, and you don't hear those conversations being brought up because it was a interracial issue that was white on white, and it was horrible for these white families that stood up for these other black families. And every now and then you can get a few bits and pieces. Then we can go right back and start with the incident that happened at the school of the prom about the captain of the basketball team and the queen doing that prom and queen night. If it wasn't for the Yersa family stepping up, that family came in and was persecuted, but that family also put out a fire that was going to create a huge separation and a racial incident in this town that could have just changed everything for the history here. If everybody could come in and be a little bit more compassionate and understanding that it's not so much of the color, but it's the heart and the compassion of the person. So if we can get our heart and our mindset right, then we can come in and understand and appreciate the things that are given, and we can go a whole lot farther.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, all of us, we've known each other for years. You know, we've interacted over prayer events, and then you've come to worship with me a couple of times. I've loved that. And, you know, it's funny when you turn on TV, you imagine that white people and black people are not doing well together at all. And then when you actually...
I know.
Whatever spell that is has not been cast over Nowata,
It
as
really
far as I'm
hasn't.
concerned.
We've always got on, ever since I was a child, even living out in the country, there was white people live all around. They used to come to our house all the time. So I really can say that I have never had anything. It's just been a good life with white people. We've all gotten along together.
Well,
We really have.
You're going to get canceled for saying that. No, people don't want to hear that.
Well,
Jeffrey,
but it's the truth.
If you listen to what Melva has to say, it's really true because in the country, even with the churches, even when I was growing up as a kid, so I'm quite sure it was well known for the generation that was way before me, but the churches were actually set up there, either was a black church or a white church, and everybody that came in it. Now, in that Alawi community, what they call the East Star Route, the churches, those country churches said, no, if we're going to church to serve God, we serve in a spirit, not in a color. And they were breaking down those racial barriers in the church long before we came in with the 1954 board of removing the segregated part of schools of the school and going desegregated. I think I got this right because sometimes I get that backwards. But the churches out there in those country sets is what initiated that, especially for these smaller communities, and it started happening in the churches. And then when you came in and you went to church, it wasn't like, okay, there's a black family, okay, there's a white family, okay, there's a Native American family. Everybody did their greet and meet with a hug, just like what it said in the Bible. You give a hug and a kiss on the cheek, and you welcome them in. And that's where it started out for me, that I recognized that everything was a breakthrough was in the churches.
That's a pretty precious memory, and I wasn't around back then, but I would think that was kind of rare. You know, it's rare enough today. You know,
Thank you.
It's weird the way that churches still have stayed culturally separate, but you know, it's something it's simple up here, and then when you try and actually live out the day of Pentecost or the day of the Lord, we're still working in that direction.
We sure are.
We're going to keep working.
Yes, sir.
I've as a pastor, you know, historically in this town, John H. Morgan Park is the black park, and then the
Jack
South
Gordon.
Park, Jack Gordon Park is the white park.
Yes.
And then my people over at the Methodist Church, some of them like worshiping outdoors, and a couple days of the year we'll do that. And we always worshiped at the white park. But last year I was like, let's go to the black park, and you know, and we went, and one of my guys, while we were worshiping, he got a call from a black buddy of his, and he says, "Are you guys over at our park?" He's kind of joking. And he's like, "Yeah, come on down and worship with us." And so anyway, we've wanted to kind of do our part to break down some of that history of separation.
That's so good.
But the Splash Pad crew that's gotten together, they've also, you know, they wanted to go to a place where it would be intentionally seen as a place for everybody to come. And it's right there on the side of the highway. It's in a historically black area. I remember, I think it was your brother was talking about back in the day, there was no place for black kids to go to swim. They would have to walk a far way. Well, heck, we're talking about putting a splash pad right there for all the neighborhood kids to just walk over. It's free, and it's an easy way to get some relief in the community to come together. It seemed to me like this is just a slam dunk idea for the community. What do you guys think about the splash pad idea?
Oh yeah, I do. I think it'd be great for, like I said, not only the blacks but everyone.
Yeah.
Like we get together, like you saying, the white part and the black part. I always, when I talk to my kids nowadays, I said, no, this is the North Park here, and that's
Right.
the South Park there.
That's
Instead
exactly
of
right.
saying the name, you know, like
Yeah.
John Morgan and Jack Gordon, I'd say North. I said, which one y'all going to?
Yeah.
So I do. I try to say North and white and
Yeah.
South instead of saying black and white.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all, we're all here together to work together.
Right. Right. And yeah, one day in the future, people are going to look back on this racial separation we had and just go, that was so silly. You know,
yeah,
how
it
did
is.
they
Oh, I
maintain
think
that?
they will too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think it's when the part in our younger generation is actually dissolving a lot of the racial
think
tension.
they are too.
They gonna look at it and say, "Boy, this world back in the day was some really ignorant people," and the thing if we deal with ignorance, and it's not a part of to be an offense part in there. Ignorance, the only thing it means is that you have not been taught or been
You just
exposed.
don't know. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And the way we go into exposure, some people have a really hard time adapting to change.
Yep.
I mean, if my dad was sitting up here swore up and down that change isn't good for anything, and I was just like, well, Dad, how it is. We got to make that change. But you let it stay for a little while and dissolve into the body. He'll say, you know what, that was the best thing ever. So we'll have to learn how to practice a little more patience for those who doesn't like change. But the part of the splash pad being at John Morgan Park, it was a no-brainer. I've never heard so many people who had talked and said that was the favorite park of all times, but because all the negative talk that came in there, it operated as a barrier because nobody wanted to take that chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, negative talk, we wish it wasn't so. Negative talk has so much power, and it's real easy for people to look at that and go, well, why would we build a splash pad when we need to build some new roads
Yep.
and we need to pay our police more? And the thing is that it's a fight on all fronts.
There you go.
Wherever you improve the city, it's going to have an effect of bleeding over to other areas in a good way. And the splash pad, it's not just a diversionary fun thing. It's something that will bring people together physically,
Yes.
literally. Even people who's worried about COVID. It's outdoors, and there's plenty of space.
Yep.
I just think it's an easy way, and anybody driving through town on 169 is going to see,
Yes.
hey, this town comes together and has fun.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a great free thing to do for the town. So I hope we can pull it together. Of course,
too.
the challenge now is inflation is just driving up the cost of everything. So
Yes.
we started off with one price, and it's going to be another by the time we get all the money together. But let's continue building up our town together. Not just us here, but I hope anybody watching this interview, I hope the feeling that they get is, hey, we have some wonderful history and heritage in this town, and we have some wonderful folks on board now. We got the Historical Society, the Lincoln Endowment Society. Hopefully they like the Methodist Church and the Baptist Church and the Splash Pad.
Yes.
We got all kinds of
Yes, they
good
do.
people working to build up in this town.
Yes.
And we don't need naysayers. We
Yeah.
need people who come together and say, yes, let's build something together.
Yes.
That's well said. Very
Yeah.
well said.
Yes.
And I think with what your group and organization and everybody else, because what I have noticed and everything that the key factor is just bringing it together where we can collaborate as one.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
everybody like to have fun. There's nobody in this world that do not want to have fun.
Maybe your dad, it sounds like.
Well,
but everybody,
Dad-
I'm sorry to joke about your
But
dad.
no, but Dad did. Dad come in there is like, why I always got to be the buzz killer,
Right.
and everything that goes in there. But then he it's just when people just have this hard time to accept change.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I'll give a short sermon on that, and we're going to end with you saying a prayer for us, if that's
Okay.
all right. And the short sermon is a big part of adulting is learning what change is good and what change is bad. Because not all change is good, not all change is bad, but just getting that discernment about what will build this town up, what will build me up as an individual, what will help my children grow up in peace and union with children who's different from them.
Yeah.
And then as we come across that, there are going to be some things that I go, nope, that is not a good change. That will not help these goals happen. But there will be other changes that that the Lord's going to work on me, and even though I'm going to be uncomfortable and I've never done it before, I can trust God, and He's going to get me through.
Amen. Amen to that.
All right,
Yes.
little sermon there. All right, let's end with the prayer, if you
Okay.
wouldn't mind, Gary.
I don't mind at all. Been praying ever since yesterday, so let's not end for today.
No, let's keep going.
Let's bow our heads and give reverence to the Lord. Lord, we just thank you for the
Thank
day,
you,
and thank
Lord.
you for the things you're doing in our lives. Thank you for
Yes.
giving us peace and comfort. Thank you for the
Yes.
rain that you send to water your
Thank
creation
you.
and your gardens, Lord. We just want to say thank you right now in the name of Jesus Christ. We thank you for Pastor Jeff and his group
Oh,
and his
yes.
crew, bringing everybody together as one, clearing up these misunderstandings and these assumptions, and just bringing in truth of the things that we're doing to bring this whole town together. And maybe we
Yes.
can be an example for others that's in this world, Lord. We want to say thank you. Just keep us
you.
healthy, keep us safe, and just light the path. And just if we can ask for a special prayer for the grant to get this splash pad where we can be a unified body. This is our prayer in Jesus Christ's name. Let's all say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.